our water body.
Welcome, everybody. This is just an audio check. We'll be starting here in another minute. I want to make sure everybody can hear. If you can hear, please go ahead and type that in the chat box and say hi.
Hello.
Welcome. Hello.
Thank you for the invitation. Greetings from Paris.
I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
All
Hey,
right.
everyone, welcome.
Morning.
Hello, good morning.
Happy World Water Day, everyone. We're so glad you're spending it, or at least part of it, with us here at our session. As you're joining, we would love to have you put in the chat your name, your location, affiliation, and anything else you really want to add is great. We will be sharing contact information with participants, so you'll have each other's contact info. We have emails for you all after the session. So if you want to share contact info, go for it, but otherwise we will be sharing that after the session. So please let us know who you are, where you are, and what your affiliation is. Thank you.
All right, to stay on time, we'll go ahead and just get started with some Zoom etiquette and then go ahead and get started. I'll turn it over to Stephanie. Quickly, my name is Julia Beck. I'm with the Project WE2 Foundation, and I will just be behind the scenes here, making sure that hopefully everything runs smoothly. If you are not familiar to Zoom, there are two different settings. There's a gallery, which shows everybody's faces, and there's a speaker setting, which shows only who's talking. With this many people on, I would highly recommend the speaker when there's just presenters, and then the gallery and the breakout rooms. You are muted to begin, and we ask that you remain muted until we enter breakout rooms for discussion. We also ask, this is the speaker view, we also ask that you keep your video off for bandwidth unless we're actually engaging in some discussions. Please use the chat box. We want this to be interactive. Feel free to ask questions and put in comments. We are recording this, as I'm sure you heard when we came in, so that you can review later as well and others can see it. And then any evaluations or polls that we may end up having, we really appreciate you filling those out. So with that, thank you for being here, and I'll turn it over to Stephanie.
Great. Thank you so much, Julia. Welcome, everybody. We're still seeing people rolling in here, so we're going to wait just one more minute. And while we're waiting, please add into the chat with your name, your location, and your affiliation. And again, happy World Water Day. We're so glad you're here. And we're going to get started with our program in just a couple minutes. As we're jumping in here, please note that we have people, we think we have people from around the world here. So take a look at the chat and see where we've got folks coming in from. Great. All right. Thank you, everyone, for posting in the chat. And I'm glad to know, of course, after all these months and months of Zoom, everyone's probably pretty familiar. If you have any questions, please do let us know about how to use any of the functionality. So today's event is hosted by a team here today, and we're going to jump into walking you through this event. Just want to say a couple words about why we're here today, and I'm going to just share a slide with you all, slide or two here. And just hold for a second, I'll be right there with that slide. Okay, just a quick check. Can everyone see my slide okay? Quick yes or
looks
no?
great. Yep.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Smith, and I am working with a team here who you will meet as we go through the event to bring this event to you today. We're bringing it to you, but we are hoping that it will be very participatory and that you will also feel that you are deeply engaged in the discussion and have time to share your thoughts and ideas, visions related to our topic, which, as you can see, is about water education and engagement and climate change. This is a series of events, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a couple slides. But for now, just know that if this is what you signed up for, you're in the right place, and we're going to proceed. This is the team that is bringing you this event. As you can see up here, hopefully many of you received our invitation. And we're going to, in order to launch our event, we are going to go through a little bit about why we're here today, and then have some words for water, which will be read by Trevor. If you are here, Trevor, I can't see so well in my screen sharing mode, but hopefully Trevor is here and can share. And if not, Zeph, I know you're here and you'll be our backup reader for our words for water. So we'll actually, you know what, let's just launch right into it. Trevor, if you're here, we know that your connection, Trevor's calling in, zooming in from Uganda. This is sometimes a difficult connection. So Trevor, if you're here, we'd love to have you read this quote.
I don't see Trevor.
Okay. Well, we'll have Zeph, if you could read this quote. Trevor is, just for a quick background, part of the Water Solutionaries, he's a teen, and a part of this event is really focused on thinking about youth voice. So hopefully we'll be able to hear Trevor's voice later on in the event. But for now, to keep things rolling, Zeph, we'll turn it over to you if you could unmute and read this quote for us.
Thank you, Steph. Saving our planet, lifting people out of poverty, advancing economic growth, these are one and the same fight. We must connect the dots between climate change, water scarcity, energy shortages, global health, food security, and women's empowerment. Solution to one problem must be solution for all. And this is a quote by Ban Ki-moon, the 8th Secretary General of the United Nations. Thank you, Steph.
Thank you, Zeph. So as we think about that quote and the importance of connecting these dots, what I'd like to ask you all to do is just quickly, briefly put the water body that you are closest to or that you're most deeply connected to in the chat. As we said, today's World Water Day. And what we'd like to see in the chat is all the water bodies that we are connected to and surrounded by around the planet show up in that chat. And then we can take a look at that in a minute. But also to give us a sense of geography and where folks are from. So please put that in the chat. We look forward to seeing your water body. You can put a specific location, a specific beach or part of the water body, or just the lake, river, pond, whatever might be nearest you. Okay, I'm seeing quite a variety showing up in the chat. If people are able to check the chat and just scroll through, you'll see we've got people from all kinds of parts of the world and different water bodies. It's great to see. Thank you, everyone. All right, I'm going to continue with this presentation. And just as we move through, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We're here today because we all, I'm assuming if you register for this event, have interest and passion perhaps around education and engagement, particularly related to water and climate change, and how we connect those dots and how we shape our culture and our future. And one of the most important findings from the recent IPCC report that came out was talking about how everyone has a role in a vibrant future. And thinking about education and engagement, that's certainly what we're here to talk about today, is to figure out how we make sure that everyone has that role in a way that is headed in the same direction and helping us to get to where we want to go, that more vibrant future, more quickly. I know I have a pretty informed audience here, so I won't spend a lot of time talking about the ins and outs of the issues that we face. We know that we've got a pretty serious path ahead of us to make things work in a way that's going to have that vibrant future that I mentioned. We have some big crises that we are in the middle of. And we know that climate change is a threat multiplier. And these things need to have real concerted strategy and effort behind them. And what we're seeing is, in many cases, I'm speaking from someone who's done all my work in the water sector. I run a water consultancy called Zephyr Mangata, and I've worked on both the North American and African Great Lakes as in my career. That's been most of my areas of focus for water. And I can speak from the water sector and say that I know there's been a big disconnect between water and climate change. And we know that these things are deeply connected. So part of our dialogue today is to talk about those connections with a specific focus on water and climate change, and think about how we can make sure that these things are both deeply connected and very strategically approached. We know that making sure that collaboration is happening is super important to being able to accelerate the pace of change. And we know also that we all are working on our own piece of a puzzle. And as we put those pieces together, it's only in that way that we will be able to accelerate our change and to make things happen both more rapidly, more efficiently, in a way that people are more engaged and that this change is sustained. The purpose in us being here together is bigger picture. This is part of a series of 3 events. We're working to build an alliance-based strategy that accelerates the vision and action for a positive future of water education and engagement. In the way that we're going to do this, I'll walk us through just a couple quick slides about that. We know that we need to build some bridges. We have some silos out there. Breaking down the silos isn't always super helpful, but building strategic bridges between them is really helpful. And we know that we can create the system we need to. The purpose of this event is to be able to figure out how we can have some of the outcomes laid out here on this slide. We know that we want to be able to have a broader perspective, sectors working together to do some of the items that I have listed here, to leverage strengths and be able to find those projects that are really going to help us get to where we need to go quickly, efficiently, and in a manner that, as I said, will be sustained moving forward. Our overall driving question for the 3 sessions we have, this is it. How can we accelerate the pace of water education and engagement that leads to clean water for all, a stable climate, healthy people, and a vibrant planet? For this session, we're focused on this first question, and we are so fortunate to have some wonderful climate change people in the house with us today, and we are going to be working on thinking about this particular question: how can we better amplify youth voice and action on climate change and water issues? We have some youth with us. Unfortunately, it's often hard to get youth to an event, and also professionals, because our schedules are not working out always in the way that allows us all to be together. However, we do hope to have some youth here today. However, all that to say, we're interested in having multiple perspectives, whether or not you are someone who works directly with youth, whether or not you are an educator. We are very happy to have people outside of those sectors to be able to share their perspectives in our small groups, which we'll be working on later today. And as we talk through to the next set of questions, we will be working in our upcoming sessions, which one will be in April, one will be in May, on these next 2 pieces. So next one will be focused on technology and innovation, the third one on decision-making and culture change. These are pieces that we see as needing deeper connection and better strategy, working together to be able to engage more effectively. We are going to build from session to session. Hopefully our airplane's going to fly. What we want to see happen out of all of this is a strategy that helps us to be able to work better together. And we will be keeping you posted and using your input from this session to make that happen. I want to point out here that one of the most amazing things that we've seen happen I will speak from my point of view, and I know I've talked to many others who've seen this as amazing also, is the youth leadership that has brought the climate change movement to a whole new level. And this is a picture of Leah Nemugerwa, who was invited to this event today, who is a colleague of mine in Uganda, who's a youth activist. She is planting a lot of trees today and every day. And I know that that was part of the reason she couldn't join us today, is that she was engaged in another project. And her work is emblematic of the work of many youth around the world who are raising up these issues as people who are wanting to shape the future that they will inhabit. And that's part of what we need to keep in mind in our heads and in our hearts as we're working together today. I want to just put a call to urgency, and we know that we don't have a lot of time before us. So that is the reason we're convening people today, is also to make sure we're understanding each other's perspectives, figuring out how we can, again, move more quickly, make changes that leverage strengths more strategically. And this is Autumn Peltier, who is also invited to this event today, who does a lot of work on water in particular. And another person to keep in our heads and hearts as we're strategizing and moving forward. Following today's session, we will be sharing, as I said, contacts. We will be working on a stakeholder map, which will include all of you, and we will synthesize what happens in our small groups to let you know. Our upcoming sessions are listed below. And we also, just as a note, you'll see, If you're attending our next session, which we hope you do, we will be working on different questions in each session, and your input will be very valuable, and you will hear different perspectives from our speakers who are joining us. We ask you to bring some local water in a clear container. This is not the most perfect example because this container is a little bit of a color, but this is from my tap. But if you're able to get to that water body that you listed in the chat and bring a little water to share and show next time we meet together, we will be working with that in our next session. So just as a placeholder for April. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we're going to continue with our agenda. Our next speaker will talk for a couple minutes as well, and we will be hearing from John from Project WE2. And John, I will turn the screen over to you to say a few words as well.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's really great to see everybody. The whole goal of this session today, by the way, is to have a conversation with you and for you to have a conversation with each other. But we feel like there are a few things we need to do to set the context, set the stage. So very quickly, I'm going to run through the history of the world in 30 seconds. Just kidding. We're going to talk about context water education. And it was interesting when, I've been doing this stuff a long time, over 30 years. And I actually don't think water education's ever been defined. There are numerous pieces of definitions, but I kind of pulled this together from various places. And I would say water is life, and every aspect of human lives are connected to water. Understanding these connections is achieved through education in all its forms. And by that, we're talking formal classrooms, formal universities, informal settings, through proverbs, through stories, around the campfire, hands-on, in so many more ways. Just a short history. 1945, UNESCO, the United Nations Education, Science, and Cultural Organization, was created to promote those very things. They've been a big driver in water education. The first Earth Day, 1972, and 1977, the Tbilisi Declaration was really the starting launch point for environmental education, or at least the national recognition for the value of environmental education. The organization that I lead, Project WE2, was created in 1984, and then we get down to the anniversary of which the first World Water Day was in 1993 on this date. So then we get into these big UN drivers, the decade of sustainable education for sustainable development, which Project WE2 played a big part in. And then this decade for action on water for sustainable development. And I can talk more about that as we go. But just to kind of set the stage and learning from the past as we drive to the future. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's worked, what needs improvement, and how do we accelerate. So my opinion, train the trainer models have worked. These are very common in collegial organizations for water education and many other places. They're incredibly efficient. You're working with you're allowing the experts, the teacher themselves to be the expert. Expansion of audiences pre-K through adult. So frankly, this is a huge part. So water education has expanded both up and down. Typically, it was thought of as a school-based program. Now there are millions of adults and thousands of pre-K educators that are involved in this water education process around the world. Speaking of around the world, the global integration of this and the recognition of education as a part of the solution to water challenges has definitely gone global, even as we can tell by the folks on the call here. And then in general, there's an uptick in awareness of water in our lives. And unfortunately, it's the media tends to catch on when there are real challenges to it. And we're talking about climate, extreme weather, scarcity, floods, droughts, all the other things that we read about every day. And one of the reasons we're here is to address and accelerate the engagement around those. So as far as improvement, collaboration could definitely be better. Wonderful collaborations exist, but we have a lot of work to do. Public understanding of the urgency around water is another one. policy level recognition. This is getting our decision makers around the world to recognize the urgency around water. What role does water education play in that? Stephanie mentioned the silos. There are so many people doing great work that are not communicating, and not purposely excluding, but just for lack of time or awareness, not connecting and bridging with other organizations. One of the reasons we're here today. And then recognition of the role and value of water education as a solution, not the only solution, but as a solution component of the much bigger challenges that we face. And then where do we go from here? We engage diverse sectors. We're doing it. Hear the youth voice. You folks will inherit these issues. Your voice is incredibly important. Look at technology as a tool for acceleration. Understand cultural shifts and how do we integrate water into the decision-making process. And then convene co-creation sessions to gather input, which is what we're doing today. And then finally, thank you. And I'm going to stop sharing and introduce a colleague who will speak to us next. Let's see, how do I get there? I'm sorry. So I will introduce Isatis Cintrone, who is a PhD candidate and climate governance and participation specialist from Puerto Rico. She's part of the coordination team for the US ACE Coalition and the UN ECOS community. Thank you so much, Isatis.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm going to be sharing my screen. Okay, so I think we want to, 1 second, present. Yeah, so I'm very happy to be here. I think that we need so much to be talking about these, this interconnection between climate and water. Like, I think I'm a scientist and I work in the cryosphere, and in a way, everything that I do, you know, like I come from a tropical island, I come from Puerto Rico, and often I get the question about like, what is a tropical girl doing like in the cryosphere? And a lot of it is that, you know, what starts in ice ends in water. So we have a very like big awareness of how we are connected to water and how it might impact both like our livelihoods, et cetera, in the island. So thank you so much for having me here. So I'm going to be talking about a little bit about the process and the way that we do climate action and ensuring that it's just and centers people. A little bit about what I do. Works in climate justice, and for climate justice, I think that one of the big things that we have is centering communities that are hit first and worst, because they don't have the protections that they need, and that will lead to massive displacement, hospitalization, and even death. So ever since the beginning of climate action, we've been thinking about, you know, how can we make this better? And we know that the climate is requiring a new climate governance and participatory processes and capacity building to ensure that we are actually catapulting into that just transition and harnessing the benefits of a whole of society approach while meeting the commitments of the Paris Agreement and Sustainable Development Goals. I think this is not presenting. So in terms of what we do at the UNFCCC, what we think about, like when we go to an FCCC, like how does the Paris Agreement actually ensure that we're doing this and like we're working on this front? So we are talking about having an active and informed society. And there is like a clause in the Paris Agreement that's in the Article 12 that's called Action for Climate Empowerment. And this has been recognized even like from the beginning of the UNFCCC as the importance of having an informed and active society. And the overarching goal of this is to have empowered members of all society to engage in climate action through education, training, public participation, access to information, and international cooperation. ACE provides the foundational toolkit to ensure that climate action centers people by including and elevating voices of those that are leading action, the people. So I think that there has been a lot of sectors and a lot of movement that has been, rising up recently, but our communities have been dealing this and have given no other option than to survive. So they have been spearheading climate action. Our disadvantaged communities, thinking about like Black, Indigenous, and people of color, have been spearheading these efforts for a very long time. So ACE is a way to ensure that we have the enabling environment, governance and capacity to catalyze like people-centered climate action. At this point, you might be thinking, wait, like I do some of these things, and I've heard of some programs that also work on this, like both at the governmental level or more at the organization level. And that's the thing, that historically ACE, even though it has not been called ACE, has not been aligned. And we need coherence and cross-cutting coordination to unlock the potential of it to accelerate a just transition to a low carbon economy. So let's think about what it would mean if we would have projects at scale that have been successfully raising the resilience of communities and other efforts. So we need three things. We need that everything that we do about ACE is sustained, strategic, and at scale. So we need to ensure that we are working together and that communities have a way to ensure that they have a pathway to participate. And as well, like we need policy and funding so that decisions realign and expand on ACE capacity to equitable and engage at scale. So what does this look like at on the ground? So we need to ensure that we are having, both intergenerational, gender responsive, and centering disadvantaged community. And that looks like redirecting or distributing the co-benefits of climate action, both in spending, but also in the way that these climate actions are being enacted. So if we're talking about infrastructure development or enforcement, that needs to flow also into our disadvantaged communities. And, we are talking also like the workforce development, to have training and opportunities that prioritizes this community. So I'm gonna talk about, some of the work that we do this, right? Like to accelerate just climate action that just touches on all aspects, right? Like I think that climate action and the sustainable development agenda are interconnected in making sure that we do have a just climate future. Like we cannot only look at the climate action by itself, because we do have a bunch of intersectional problems that make people more vulnerable. So in the USA's coalition, we want to foster strategic, sustainable, and scalable partnerships to develop or implement both at the national level and ACE national strategy, so that it is policy of the government to have people being included in the decisions that affect them. So we do this by 3 axes. So we have a knowledge sharing hub, we have advocacy and strategic planning, and climate justice power. So in terms of connections, I think that's something, or opportunities, I guess I would say, is that, we know that in order to have climate corrective measures that ensure, water sanitation, water availability, and then coastal protection, these needs to be developed in a transparent and inclusive way. And ACE, as explained in the UNFCCC, provides a means for this. In order to unlock the ACE full potential, we need to work together, right? Like we need to work together. I think not only to unlock ACE, to all action. So as a society, we have always followed water, establishing our urban centers, are close to water, close to the coast. And we have some of the things that we should be thinking about is that floods and other water disaster account for 70% of all death related to natural disasters. And there's that intersectionality component, and that we know that everything in climate, we need governance, accountability, and learning to enable sustainability in fresh water and coastal resources management that safeguards human rights, gender integrity, and enhance livelihoods. So we need to raise awareness of the linkages between climate change, sustainable development, and water. We have communities, for example, Flint, that their vulnerability to climate change is enhanced by, the lack of water, of clean water access, and that is in the US. So I think that in order for us to build a truth and effective climate action, we really need to be talking about how governance and participatory processes are embedded in the way that we approach everything on climate. So forests, water, all of these need to the basis is community. So there is a saying that goes nothing about us without us. And I think that is something that we should always bring forward in the way that we make decision making to ensure that we are creating a future that is for everyone. So thank you so much for the time and having me here.
Thank you so much, Isatis. That was so inspiring. We are so lucky to have had you join us and talk to us today. So now I'll share my screen quick. All right. So it is time for all of you to get involved now. So what we're going to do first is I will add this to the chat. Sorry. When I have it in full screen mode, I can't get to the chat. Sorry, one second. Sorry about this. There we go. All right, so I just put a link in the chat. And this is where we're going to start getting involved. So if everyone can click the link in the chat to join the Jamboard. If you haven't used Jamboard in the past, it's okay, it's super simple. And then in the moment, you'll be prompted to join a breakout room with 6 to 7 other attendees. Then you're going to head to the Jamboard slide that corresponds with your assigned group number. So when you get that pop up and it says you are invited to join breakout room number 1, you would go to slide 1 on the Jamboard. Or if you are invited to join breakout room 2, you would go to slide 2. And you'll have a breakout room facilitator in your individual small group that will help you navigate to that slide as well. So then you can do some brief introductions within your small group just for a few minutes, get to know the people who you're working with. And then select one representative from that small group to report back to the large group once you have dealt with these questions. So we are going to work through collaboratively the big question of today, which is, how can we better amplify youth voice and action on climate and water issues? And within that, we will be looking at the barriers, what's needed, what opportunities we have to work on improving the situation with that question. And then your small group facilitator is there to help. So a quick little tutorial with our Jamboard. Once you're here, you'll go to your slide. Up at the top, you'll see that right now we're on slide 1 of 8. You can go to 2 of 8, 3 of 8, 4 of 8. Whatever your number of group is, you can go to that slide, and you can always go back and forth too to check in on what the other groups are doing. So what we'll do is your facilitator will help guide you through starting with what's working, and then going to gaps and barriers, what is missing from youth voice and action on climate and water issues. What barriers do we have to accomplishing that? So what is keeping us from solving these issues to our full potential? And then finally, what's needed and what opportunities do we have within your group? What partnerships can you make? What new ideas can you pursue to help amplify youth voice and action on climate and water issues? So in order to make a sticky note, you'll go over to this left sidebar, click on this little sticky note icon. This is my idea. You can just type in whatever you want, choose the corresponding color for your group number, and then just click save. Then you can move it under whichever category you would like to contribute to. All right, so let's get into those groups now, those breakout rooms, and get going.
And how long are we going to keep the rooms open for?
Oh yes, thank you. We will keep them open until 12:20 Eastern. So we have 40 minutes to work with.
Okay, and just as we're getting into our groups, we have a question in the chat. Do you need to have Jamboard to do this? So we should just be able to click on the link. So hopefully that works for you, Trevor. Try that and see what happens.
And if not, facilitators will share their screen and they can help type in and contribute that way. Okay, I will go ahead and
been able to join already. If not, yes, that's a great idea. Facilitators can share their screen in the small group.
all right, I'm going to go ahead and open all the rooms. Five seconds. Just kidding. That was my warning. They now have 60 seconds.
Okay.
50 seconds.
Welcome back, everyone. We'll give a couple of minutes for everybody to get back together. How did the discussions go? Good. Good. I'm seeing smiles.
Deep and wide. I love my group. These folks are amazing thinkers.
Oh, good. Yeah, my group was awesome too. Just like so many ideas.
Seven, 5 seconds, 4. All right.
Okay. So everybody should be heading back into the main room now. Looks like we have Quite a few people back. All right. So let's get going with a representative from the yellow group, group 1. Who wants to tell us what you came up with?
Everyone, we had a really great group from actually worldwide. So the Philippines, Uganda, Texas, Chicago, and New York. And then also a national Project WET. So we had really good conversations. Really quickly, a few themes that we wanted to highlight under what's working was the opportunity, the enthusiasm for youth to be engaged in this topic of climate change and water. And you know, that there's a great opportunity here to facilitate or connect youth with projects and programs and actions that help harness that passion and lift up their voices. We did talk about some barriers and gaps. Some of that includes training for educators and also support from administrators if you're thinking of a traditional, you know, education setting. So funding and time that would be needed for educators to benefit from specialized training. And then under opportunities, we talked a lot about opportunities, and one major theme was that, you know, climate education shouldn't wait until somebody takes an environmental science class as a college student or a high school student, that the climate topic and the water topic is so critical. It should be integrated in every aspect of the curriculum from the time that, you know, young kids start their education career all the way up through. So I think that's the main things that we wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was great. All right, let's hear from group 2, green group.
Right, I was volunteered. I'm Rick. All right, so what's working? There's really nothing like school. There's something there that's an essence that we have seen kind of people respond to well after not being in school for a couple of years. So there's something there that we should probably pay attention to. And we believe it's something around the place of learning and a safe space, and something around just having peers and being social. We also can listen to social media. We can actually understand, you know, where they are and get a lot of information that way. So that's another thing that's actually working right now. Some gaps, there's definitely some questions that are very deep, like who would listen to them if we're going to actually hear them? Who should hear them? Is there a definition around what youth is? What do we mean by that? Is there an actual age? Is there differences by geographies? There's the cultural differences. So that's a pretty big question, I think. There's also some comments and some problems around power differentials that they're really real. We need to figure out a way to empower youth and give them a lot of confidence so that they can actually, you know, provide a voice. Technology is really critical for a lot of the work that we're probably going to be doing, but access is not equitable. So that's another gap. There's another really interesting comment around standards. There's a lot of standards that are actually there, and they're really good, and they've been really honed over the years, and a lot of great inquiry-based study standards are there, but the implementation is where it falls down, which was news to me. So I think there's a lot of opportunity actually if we can figure out how to bridge that gap. Barriers, climate change or climate situations and in education aren't always viewed as an imminent problem, so it kind of gets second shrift to math and other kinds of science that's more quote unquote normal, but it doesn't mean that it's not an important problem to be figuring out. There's a lot of trust issues and disinformation going on today, as we all know. So how can we kind of overcome science and trust? And we talked a bit about opportunities. How can we create, sorry, it's a little small on my screen. How can we create ways to integrate multi-generations? Can we create ways that youth can can collaborate across generations. So we shouldn't just silo them into their own bucket. They can actually learn a lot from working with elders or people in industries or people at all ages. So what can we do there? There's a lot of opportunities to actually use technologies better. I think there's a lot of room to grow, and especially in Zoom learning or hybrid learning. We shouldn't just assume that the actual space of school is where it all should happen, because we've learned a lot in the last 2 years. We should use and build on that learning. Is there a way to build a climate advocacy union, like a world youth parliament, but really take advantage of technology to do that in a real way and get a real global voice going? And then there was another comment about working directly with nature. Like, how do we really kind of not ignore, but really prioritize the natural world and integrate it much more into how we learn in some situations? I think that I'll just stop there. We have a lot of other things to do.
Oh, thank you so much. That sounds awesome. I do see that we are just about out of time. We're going to continue sharing, but I completely understand and want to respect your time. If people need to leave, this session is being recorded, and so we will be sure to share the rest with you after the fact. Also, we are going to compile all of these post-its into one big answer for everybody, and we will be able to share that and build upon it for the next session next month. So with that, a representative from Group 3, would you like to share?
Sure. I think that's me, Elizabeth, and apologies to Group 1. I'm figuring out Jamboard, and we were putting notes on Group 1 instead of on our own Group 3 at first, but I think we eventually figured it out. So what's working? I think we're starting to say very similar things between the groups. Education is one of obviously the best places for it to work. We had a wonderful international group. So from Kenya, from France, from the United States. And I know in Kenya, it was mentioned that environmental clubs within the schools are a great sort of social networking possibility. We spent a lot of time, I'm going to go ahead. Oh, what else is working? Teaching skill sets of collaboration in order for students or young people to do the work of participation. So it's, I think Marie-Claude mentioned her grandson would go to a protest about water or climate issues, but then following the protest would not necessarily have information or know what to do to stay active or to stay involved. So making sure we teach both skills of collaboration as well as what to do following the protest for young people. Barriers. One of my students, Gabe, a young filmmaker, was on and was talking about being exhausted from Zoom. That young people want to connect more face-to-face, as well as being overwhelmed by the language and the vocabulary of climate crisis, knowing everyone knows there's a problem, everyone knows there are issues, but getting bogged down in some of the vocabulary and the details can ward off young people. What's needed? Good opportunities. One of the good examples was recognizing that adults need youth mentors to stay connected. So we absolutely need to find and listen to young people and find new ways to reach these audiences, communication, publicity, access, getting really organized in terms of websites, social media, and try, when we don't have the money as oil and gas do to reach, big commercials, what can we do in the meantime to communicate some of these solutions, some of these collaborative skills, and just some of the events that are happening. I know in my own university, I'm not always aware of what's happening or who knows whom, what are the things going on when you're working within a big organization. So finding better ways to communicate our events as well as our skills. So I think that's probably most of what we came with.
Thank you. Thank you. And last but not least, group 4. Sarah, are you still with us, group 4?
I'm here, yes.
Oh, okay.
I had to take myself off mute. Sorry about that. All right, so yeah, we had a really great group discussion. We had some youth that are in Puerto Rico. I can't remember the other places, but they did engage. We had a 15-year-old. She was pretty awesome. And I'll talk about some of her concerns. But yeah, so what's working are allowing kids or youth to participate in forums where they could actually engage with one another, and even adults to share their views on and their perspective on how things may be able to be fixed, or even just concerns that they may have. A youth adult partnership model, the use of technology and social platforms as an organizing tool, providing youth with tools to speak out, like with public service announcements, but even school board and city council meetings. Having different spaces to communicate, with others their age, so peer-to-peer relationships and opportunities to build more collaborative opportunities, shareable content that's been working on social media, and allowing young people to participate in management roles when it comes to water resources in their communities. That's what's working. When we talk about gaps, or should I go to barriers? Barriers, I would say some of the feedback was that adults have trouble stepping back, that the decision-making spaces are not designed to include youth. There's a lack or I would say lack or a trouble finding funding for to support youth projects and such. There's a socioeconomic conditions that happen in the households that actually prevent students from participating. Young lady from Puerto Rico, she talked about that, and that how her mom, pretty much, her schedule would conflict with, her, the youth schedule to be able to participate in, additional programs and extracurricular activities. And then barriers, I would say city leaders are disengaged, and they're hesitant to move forward, or they're slow to move forward. There's a lack of environmental justice information, and it's not prioritized. Water can be fragmented, a fragmented sector, and we need to promote collaboration more often. I feel that that's a huge gap. Intersectionality is missing. We've got to learn to work more with everybody, people from all walks of life, as opposed to just working with people that we think are, are good in one area, because I think everybody can lend a hand to the work. And then there's not enough senior persons who are acting as champions for youth engagement. That's a gap. And then finally, what's needed in terms of opportunities, school projects centered on environmentalism, rather than including it as an optional extracurricular program. It should be included in the subject matter. Intergenerational collaboration. People from different industries can support programs. Like, we work with law firms, we work with all kinds of different organizations to support what we do. And that particular law firm that we work with, they work and they focus on the environmental law. So they see that there's synergy there, and they work with us. Also, creating a holistic community approach to water stewardship, and including businesses like student internships, community service projects, etc. And then school clubs. Think that that's something that will help to encourage youth engagement. And let's see, I think that's pretty much it. Just including more curriculum in the students' studies would be helpful. All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Stop sharing that. All right. So thank you so much. This brings us to the close of our event. I'm going to hand it back to Stephanie, and she just has a few words to end.
Thank you, everyone. Just huge thanks. Actually, this is thrilling to see what's come together and to let you all know that we will be putting this together. We will follow up with you. We are building community around this session, and for our next session, which will be April 19th, we invite you back. We would love to have you back. This has been really an exciting conversation, and to see where we can take it from session to session is going to be even greater. So thank you. I just want to say again, happy World Water Day. Thank you for spending part of it with us, sharing. You did a huge amount of great work and contributed so much. Hi, I'm seeing so many friends out there. This is wonderful to have you all here. Thank you for staying a little longer to close us out and show respect for everyone's comments so that we were able to hear them. This recording has been recorded, and there's been lots of interest also from people who couldn't be here today in wanting to be at the next session, wanting to hear what we talked about. And so we will share this more broadly, and just sending you all big water love and gratitude. Thank you so much for this. Thank you all, and cheers to the rest of your day. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Happy World Water Day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Good job, everybody. Bye bye.
And don't hesitate to participate in the Futures of Education. It's still there. Please go to the link.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the reminder.
All right. Take care.
Ciao.
Ciao. Au revoir.
Au revoir. Good to see you.